The North Carolina Tar Heels, one of the up and coming programs from last year. They've had success with Mac Brown there, who's come back. He was there for 10 seasons in the 80s and 90s, and then went off to Texas, won a national title in 2005, and then came back in recent years to try and revamp the program again. And they made the ACC championship game last year, lost to Clemson, and they were a pretty decent team. They went 9-5, I believe. Yeah, 9-5. So overall, a pretty decent year for them. But what did they look like this year? Well, key departures, obviously Josh Downs and Antoine Green. They combined for 42% of receiving yards and 18 touchdowns for the Tar Heels. And importantly, their offensive coordinator, Phil Longo, he's gone. And I think that's going to have a big impact on the play calling. Obviously, Josh Downs kind of had a roller coaster year last year. He made some big catches, but he also had some key drops. The game against Georgia Tech, I remember he had a game-winning touchdown pass dropped, and so that led to the upset. Phil Longo is also gone, and I think that's key for the play calling. There was a very spread attack with Drake May behind center where he could run and shoot, which was very effective for the Tar Heels for most of the season. But when they came up against higher quality defenses, they struggled. And obviously, bringing in a new offensive coordinator, he's going to bring in a new playbook that everyone has to learn from the offensive line, quarterback, running back, and wide receivers. And it's possible that they could be off page, and that can cost you in some situations. On the defensive side, Storm Duck, Dante Balfour, Camp Kelly, and Tony Grimes, they all transfer out. They were all 4-star cornerbacks. So you're really looking at a completely new secondary for the Tar Heels. And that's one of your main concerns with this team is their defense. They were not great. I think you ask anybody on the street what is the main problem with the Tar Heels football team, and it's their defense. They rank very low in both passing yards given up, rushing yards given up, points allowed per game. It's not an elite defense by any means. And with the overhaul that you have on the secondary side, doesn't look like it's going to be improving. Key arrivals, though, Devontae Walker, wide receiver, looking to fill the shoes of Josh Downs and Antoine Green. Tyler Thompson, J. Braun Harvey, and Joel Stallings, they are all 4-star defensive linemen coming in for North Carolina. And that's good. That's what you want to see is improvements on the defense. But I would prefer them to be coming in for the secondary as well because of those key departures. And then, obviously, as I talked about earlier, offensive coordinator, they bring in Chip Lindsey to run the offense with Drake May. I really do think that this is going to be a big thing for UNC this season is that change of offensive coordinator. And I think the Tar Heels will take a step back from their 9-win season last year. I think Drake May is going to have a bit of a sophomore slump. Obviously, the defense won't be much better. I think the defensive line will be better, but I think the secondary will still be as bad, if not worse, than it was last year. And that's really bizarre to me because Mac Brown, he built Texas up on the defensive side of the ball, because that's how Texas has been built as a program beyond its coaches. It's always had a pretty good defense, if not an elite defense. But strengths, obviously, quarterback Drake May, Heisman, on the Heisman watch list. And then weaknesses, defense, of course. They're probably the biggest liability in terms of a team as a whole unit. But let's get into the schedule. You start off in a neutral site battle of the Carolinas against South Carolina. And with Spencer Rattler, the way that offense was clicking near the end of the year, and how Shane Beamer has just put momentum behind the program there, I think the Gamecocks beat you. I think you take an L in week 1. They put 63 points or something like that on Tennessee, and Tennessee was a legitimate top 10 team last year. Yeah, they lost their quarterback in that game, but I don't think anything was stopping that South Carolina offense. And especially not UNC's defense. So a loss to South Carolina week 1. Then you come back home to play App State. I think this is a win. App State is taking a step back this year as well. They lost Chase Bryce, which is difficult because breaking in a new quarterback for any program is one of the hardest things. And I think it won't be as close as last year. Last year, that game, 63-61, was pretty much an anomaly of offense. It was fun to watch, but if you're an offensive fan, but if you're a defense guy, that was not the game to watch for you. But a win against the Mountaineers. And then you play Minnesota. I think this will be a win. PJ Fleck has kind of lost momentum. The allegations against him for letting players off with the Fleck Bank, whether that's true or not, it just has negativity surrounding the program. I don't think they're as high as they were during the Row the Boat year when I think they cracked the top 10 after they beat Penn State or something like that. But definitely not where they were a few years ago with him at the helm. And it's a huge benefit to you that this is a home game and you don't have to go to Minnesota. Then you go on the road to Pitt. I think Pat Narduzzi's defense is enough to stop Drake May this time. I think they'll have a better offense, and combined with the secondary that UNC is going to have, I think Phil Dracovic does enough for the Panthers to beat you. So you take a loss to the Pitt Panthers. And then you have your bye week. Come out of your bye week and you play Syracuse. Dino Babers, I think, is taking a step back after losing Robert and I. That's hard. Garrett Schrader's still there. They still have some playmakers. I think that will be closer than people will expect. But I think you get a win against Syracuse, probably in a high-scoring game between the Pines. Then you have a home game against Miami. If you've seen my Miami video, you know what I think. I think Tyler Van Dyke carves up the UNC secondary. He's one of the most accurate passers in the entire conference, and that's definitely not going to help with the experience or the skill that your secondary has with everyone that's transferred out and what you brought in this offseason. So I think you take a loss to the Hurricanes. I think that'll also be a pass-heavy game. That'll definitely be a quarterback duel between Drake May and Tyler Van Dyke. Then you have a home game against Virginia. Virginia, obviously, as I've said, my heart goes out to them for how they their season ended last year. It's something that should never happen to any group of people or persons. But when it comes to football, I think you get a win versus Virginia. I think that the Virginia project is still in process in its early years of being built up the way it should be with Tony Elliott. And of course, I think he's the guy to do it. He was very successful at Clemson, and I think he will have success there. But then you play Georgia Tech. You go to Georgia Tech. Brent Key also trying to build the program there for the Yellow Jackets, and I think he's the right fit for that job. You know, he's a trenches guy. He's going to build up the offensive line and defensive line the way he wants it in that Alabama style. You know, he was an assistant for Nick Saban when they won championships there, and he's got a quarterback, an SEC quarterback. But with building a program, you're going to have those games where you come out and you're a little inconsistent, and I think Drake May still has that consistency. If the play calling is there, and this is talking about the overall season as well, not just the Georgia Tech game, but Drake May's consistency paired with how the play calling is going to be for UNC throughout the season is really going to translate to how successful they are. Obviously, you have to game plan correctly for each week, and I think Georgia Tech's defense is still in the process of being developed to an elite level year in and year out. And I think this will be one of those weeks where they don't perform up to par. And when you have a guy like Drake May under center for your team, you don't want to be performing that way. So I think you get the win in Atlanta against Brent Key's Yellow Jackets. Then you play Campbell. Campbell, this should be a win. It's Campbell. I mean, what do you want me to say? And then you have Duke. Duke for your homecoming game, which is very brave. You know, that's one of your big rivals. The battle for the Victory Bell, which is one of my favorite rivalries in the ACC for football. Seeing the team that wins paint the bell right after the game ends is really exciting. Really fun way to celebrate a game. And it was a thriller last year. You know, it came down to the wire. Drake May throwing a touchdown pass in basically the corner of the end zone, the front corner, not the back corner, to win 38-35. And I think that's kind of stuck with the Blue Devils this offseason. You know, they had a good, surprising season for a lot of people last year, going 9-4 with a bowl win. So a good year for Duke. So they want to continue that with Mike Elko, and I think they will. And building off of them remembering that drive last year, I think this year it'll be the reverse situation where it'll be just as close, but Riley Leonard will be the one that gets the ball last with enough time to lead a drive and take the lead with a touchdown in the final seconds of the game. In a bit of revenge, and they'll paint the bell in front of you at your homecoming. And then you go to Clemson. Obviously, Clemson destroyed UNC last year in the ACC championship game. And to be honest, I think that's going to be a repeat. I think Clemson's defense is too elite for a new offensive coordinator and new receivers and new playbook to dissect Clemson's defense on the road. I don't see it. I think Clemson as a whole, as a program, is too far ahead for UNC to compete with. And really, I just don't understand why Mac Brown can't develop a program as a whole. Obviously, he can get an offense. He can get Sam Howell. He can get Drake May. But he can't get these guys on defense. And it's wild to me. You know, he left Texas in a pretty bad state as a whole. But that he was there for so many years at Texas. And you have that fall off eventually where, you know, your brand just starts to deteriorate. And we're seeing that kind of with Nick Saban. You know, you're seeing it with Jimbo Fisher. These guys build up this momentum in the early years of their big Power 5 job. Or at least the one that they succeed in. And then they get up to the top and then they start to decline because they've gotten past their prime. And you're kind of seeing that now with Dabo as well. And Mac Brown is trying to turn back the clock when he came back to UNC and do it all again. But it's not working for the defensive side, which is really odd. If I was him, and obviously I don't know the behind the scenes of what happened with all the secondary this offseason transferring, but my main focus would be on the defense, and I'm sure it is, but obviously what he's doing is not working, so he needs to change it up somehow. And I know that he's pretty old, and he probably can't have that separation from his own judgment that he's built up over the years as a coach to realize that he needs to change his ways to actually improve the program. But ultimately it's going to hurt UNC this year and in years to come. I don't know how long he's going to be there. Like I said, he's pretty old. Could be 2 more years, 3 more years, 4 more years. Who knows? Longer than that. But this is not a guy that's going to be coaching for you for the next 10 years. I don't see it. You know, he just doesn't. He doesn't have the stamina for that. But anyway, and then you finish off the year at NC State. NC State also more complete program with its defense, and I think their offense is going to be better this year with Brennan Armstrong and Robert Anae as the offensive coordinator coming in. Brennan Armstrong being the quarterback that transferred from Virginia. And when they teamed up the last time we saw them together, Brennan Armstrong had a terrific year. He threw over 30 touchdowns on the year in that offense. And I think with the playmakers that NC State has in Trent Penix and Kevin Concepcion, that'll be enough to score points on that side of the ball, especially against the defense that the Tar Heels have. And then on the other side of the ball, you know, Peyton Wilson and Aiden White, as well as the other people that will step up throughout the year for them, will do enough once again to beat the Tar Heels for the 3rd year in a row. And it's really odd to me that Mac Brown, to go back to him, would complain about this scheduling. You know, for years, he coached at Texas where he had to play teams like Nebraska, Oklahoma, a very good Texas Tech team near the end of his career at Texas, in back-to-back weeks in the Big 12. And for years, NC State and Louisville and Syracuse even had to play Florida State and Clemson in stretches because they were in the same division. And for him to complain that he has to do a tough stretch with Duke, Clemson, and NC State, it's a little ridiculous. But I do look at the at Clemson and at NC State, and that is tough. But if you want your quarterback to win the Heisman, or if you want to be perceived as an elite program, you have to face these stretches because that's what elite teams do. I mean, you look at say Alabama. They have to play Tennessee, they have to play LSU, they have to play, in previous years, Auburn was really good. In previous years, Texas A&M was decent. Arkansas, Ole Miss. They had to play these teams almost back to back. Auburn, I know, recently had to play LSU and Georgia in back-to-back weeks in one of their schedules that came out. So it's not something that is exclusive to just UNC. In fact, the Clemson schedule has at Miami, at NC State, and then a home game against Notre Dame in that stretch. So it's difficult for them too, but they deal with it because they're an elite program. But teams just deal with it because that's what they do. I don't understand. I have UNC going 6-6 in a what I would think is a disappointing year for what people expect of them. They were picked third in the media poll today that came out. I don't see that with the defense that they have. Yeah, they'll beat up on weaker opponents, but when it comes to these teams that have legitimate defenses and offenses, they struggled last year, and they've only gotten worse on the defensive side. And I think they're taking a step back on the offensive side. But again, it's what I think. It's not necessarily what's going to happen. I could be totally wrong. But I'd like to thank everyone for watching, everyone who subscribed. I'd like to apologize for the inconsistent upload schedule. I've been moving, not only myself, but my family. So it's been a little bit stressful. But I appreciate your patience. I promise to get all these prediction videos done before the season starts. And then I'll probably be doing a few other videos before the season starts, or maybe during the season beyond just what I plan to do for weekly recaps of what happens throughout the conference. But yes, I'd like to thank you for your support and your patience. And the next video will be the NC State Wolfpack.